There can be too much of a good thing. I want to talk about my obsession with running and the problems that it created for me. When I was younger, I wasn't a natural athlete. I didn't have the physicality or the coordination to be good at the ball sports like tennis or basketball. And when you don't have that natural athleticism, but you still want to do sports, you get pushed to cross country and track because you don't need coordination to run. I tried wrestling as well in middle school, but I wasn't the best culture fit. And at one point, one of the coaches saw me on the treadmill. I was moving quite well. He suggested that I give running a shot. Fast forward to sophomore year, I decided to pick up running as a hobby, immediately got hooked to it, had a stressful life at home, and running just mellowed me out. I competed in the 800, the 1600 meters, so the middle distances, but my real passion was just being outside and logging miles and miles. Now, my times were solid, but they weren't amazing. In the 1600 meters, which is about a mile, I ran in the low 5 minutes my first year, and then by senior year, I got that down to 440s. But I became addicted to becoming more fit and watching my times come down. I started running 50, 60, 70 miles a week. And despite my conditioning improving, I developed some issues. So first of all, I grew up in a neighborhood without much green space or soft surfaces. So I was doing all of my running on asphalt and concrete, and my neighborhood was really hilly. And the impact from those harder surfaces started to beat up my body. And that was exacerbated by my weight, I think. I have a naturally wider frame, and at 5'10-ish, I weighed in the mid 150s. Most of my teammates at that height were 10 to 15 pounds lighter. Now, another problem is that the roads were banked, meaning the angle on the outside of the road starts to curve down, and it gets more extreme, the angle does, the further to the outside you are. And you can't run in the middle of the road because, you'll get hit by a car, right? And the roads are asphalt, which is a little bit softer than the concrete sidewalk. And so running on the outside of the road was the least bad option. Now that banking alters the loading in each limb because now the landing heights are different. And that can create overpronation in one foot more than the other, offsetting hips, more shock to one limb than the other. And I think this stuff contributed to some of the injuries that I'd later face, but I wasn't thinking about any of this at the time. So I'm still in high school at this point, but I started to develop some knee issues, Osgood-Schlatter's disease, which causes like a bump above your shin, patellar tendonitis, but nothing too crazy, nothing that I couldn't sort of work through. And when that stuff would pop up, I'd take a little bit of time off, recover, come back, not a huge deal. Now, as I got more obsessed with running, my psychology started to become disordered. I was often in a manic state. I would deprive myself of sleep to go out and run in the middle of the night. I had delusions of grandeur, thinking that I was going to be a professional athlete, even though I wasn't a standout in high school. And that's not to say that people don't improve or there aren't late bloomers, but I just wasn't very realistic. And for an obsessive personality type like me, running offers you a lot of data to think about. Race times, training regimen, diet and calories, body weight, and I meticulously tracked all of that stuff. I would read this forum for a couple hours a day called Let's Run, letsrun.com. You can go check it out. And I would follow the pros and chat online with other running enthusiasts. Plus, the immediate feedback from seeing the times come down really triggered the pleasure center in my brain. And then when you throw in the urgency of competition, that creates an incentive to push even harder. And I had a coach at the time who saw that I was overly enthusiastic, and he tried to rein me in, which is what a good coach should do. But I didn't take well to authority. I still don't really take well to authority, so I didn't listen to them and just continued to push harder. And that's one of the reasons actually I am not competing in powerlifting is I don't want an extra incentive to push even harder than I should. So back to running. Eventually everything came to a head in my freshman year. I came back to Atlanta for winter break. I was more manic than ever. I wanted to have an incredible indoor track season. So I was running twice a day, sometimes in the middle of the night, not sleeping much. And I remember I had a track workout and I felt a deep pain in my right femur up towards my hip. And that pain compounded with more running to the point where it was unbearable to load my right leg at all and even walk around. And so I had some scans done, an x-ray, and then eventually an MRI. Both of those showed that I had a stress fracture in my right femur. And after that happened, I had to take a look in the mirror and reassess. Like I said, I had had knee issues before, but nothing as serious as a stress fracture. I'd never even broken a bone. And a stress fracture, especially close to your core, is a serious injury. And so during the recovery from the stress fracture, I couldn't run, couldn't do weight-bearing activities on my legs. So I would do what's called aqua jogging, which is essentially just treading water in the pool while making a running motion. And that kept me relatively fit, but anytime I would try to come back and start running outside again, the pain would always reemerge. And that actually continued for years, even after scans showed that my bone had healed. And so I had to quit the team, and that was that. I also later learned that I had a serious vitamin D deficiency. I had some blood work done and tested at 8 nanograms per milliliter, which is incredibly low. Doctors recommend somewhere in the range of 50 for optimal bone health. And I think that certainly could have contributed as well to the fracture. I'll say that if you are a darker skinned person living in a colder climate or not getting a lot of sunlight, I was living in Maine at the time, it's worth getting your vitamin D levels checked out and potentially even supplementing. But talk to your doctor about that. Now today, I don't run at all. I don't think running is a bad form of exercise, and for most people, the benefits of the cardiovascular fitness probably outweigh some of the cons. But I do think the damage from the continuous impact and repeated movement pattern of running is underestimated, especially for people who are heavier or running on harder surfaces. And so I think the lesson that I take away from my experience is that you can develop a physically and psychologically unhealthy relationship with an activity that is ostensibly good for you, or in moderation is actually good for you. And that conception of the activity as beneficial to you can make it harder to rationally assess your relationship with it. And so I'm actually reminded of eating disorders. For example, caloric restriction for most people is beneficial, but obviously to an extreme degree, anorexia, very unhealthy. And there's a whole social competition element to that as well. So I just think it's important for us to know our vulnerabilities, understand our motivations. Why are we doing the things that we're doing? Is it for health? Is it ego, competition? Like I said, I had a coach who was trying to rein me in, and he had more experience than me, but I didn't want to listen, and so I paid a price for that, right? So that's it. And I'm curious to hear from you all what you make of the story and whether you have experience overdoing behaviors and activities that are supposed to be healthy. I'll see you all next time. Bye.